here is some information that you may need, because if you are married to a beautiful lady and you're a handsome man, right, it works, because they say birds of the same feather will flock together. But now, if you go out in the hunt for a house help, are you going to pick a pretty lady or a handsome young man as your house help, home with your beautiful wife and your kids and so on? You run the risk of potentially wrecking your marriage, because it may be the wife, right, who is the workaholic, and the problems begin from there when you are not there, always present. The tendency is she might tend to begin to like the housemate who is the handsome young man. In the case of the man, when the woman is the workaholic, is the guy, the man, right, who begins to look at the beautiful and pretty housemate who is the lady with those eyes of lust and so on. Thanks for coming, TATOH Kenneth.
It's a pleasure, Divine.
I'm
glad to be here again.
Yeah, it's a pleasure having you back here, and having you to talk about this, I think, is crucially delicate.
Actually,
the people you bring home, as do we even need to get them in the first place?
In fact, it is to an extent indispensable, because many people today who are married are career persons.
Right.
So you can't be a career man or a career woman and effectively manage your home and your job or your education without having help from these domestic helpers, who will at least come from time to time, or who come to live with you in order to assist in house chores. And when kids start coming in, it's another ball game.
Right.
Yeah, because surely the kids will be closing from school at 2:30 or at 1:30 when you are still at work.
Yes.
That is it. And there are many things which maybe the woman will return at call it 5:30 p.m. or 6 p.m. So exhausted that if she had to prepare a shoe, she won't start at that time. There's need for somebody who ought to have been there to at least put one and two together, so that even if she has to just conclude, she should have been able to have some help.
I mean, some will call this a necessary evil, the housemates.
Well,
can you reschedule your time and plan your day in such a way that you don't get to need house help? Is it possible despite the workloads?
It is possible, but just to a limited extent. I think now with those who education providers are coming up with the kindergartens, but most kindergartens, a few I know around, they close by, call it 1 or 2.
But you can rush from the job site to pick your kid, and
you pick your kid, take to work, and then close with the kid or something.
And go back home.
It's a challenge because it's complicated. It's actually needed. I think what we should do is just to see how to manage these people well, or function with them in a proper and appropriate manner. It's true that most of them are impossible. Yeah, they are impossible, but to function with them in an appropriate manner can at least give the results at the end of the day.
I was thinking about this last night as I walked through this, and I was saying to myself, we need to get the housemates that are not so good looking. You don't need the pretty girl like your house girl and the handsome young man like your house boy. That's you're a candidate for double trouble. They should be, to say it clean and clear, ugly people. Is that?
That is just an element, because one of the challenges that come with our domestic helpers, it may just be the issue of having an affair with the spouse of the opposite sex.
All right.
But there are many other factors, many other risk factors, because these people are actually key. They are actually very important, because when they come and live with you, they have mastered the secret of the home. They know where you keep some key issues. They know how the home functions. If you don't manage them well, they can be the ones who team up with a gang to break into the house without much ado, because they master where maybe you keep the key, or in fact somehow they master some lapses. Every home will have some areas where some lapses abound. So and then another issue can be, they stay with your kids. They can do and undo. They prepare food.
There's been this case in Limbe where one got children poisoned.
Exactly.
So a couple of months ago.
Yeah. So there is a great need to manage our domestic helpers well, because if they're not well managed, you run the risk of conflict between the husband and wife.
Yes.
And it even gets at times more delicate when it is a relative. Let's say the man's relative comes to live
All right.
with them. You know, it is always going to be so difficult because maybe when the man wants to be objective, the wife will think he is taking sides with the relative.
Yes.
And vice versa. If it is a woman's relative, when she wants to be objective about something, the man will think she is taking sides
Right.
with his relative. So at the end of it all, there is really need for couples to get some hands-on understanding, hands-on knowledge on how to flow with these domestic helpers. There are usually at least two scenarios: those who come and go, and those who live with the
All
couple permanently.
Yes.
Yeah, so both cases there must be a proper and prudent management of these people if conflict will not hit the home big time, or if their presence, which is supposed to be to bring an added value to the home, is not well managed. At the end of it all, it can rather be disaster. Yeah.
But what's the proposition? I mean, what are you suggesting as the way out of this? Now,
There are a couple of suggestions I want to bring. The first of things is that when you bring in somebody, both for permanently to live with you or somebody who comes and goes, the first of things is to make known your values, the values of the home. Let the person be educated on the values. Communicate to the person that these are our values, this is what we stand to represent.
Right.
And, you know, let there be a dialogue, let there be that opportunity for the person to understand that he or she may be coming from a background which is, you know, animated by these kind of values, but here this is how we function.
Okay.
When you bring in such values, at least it will help the person to adapt. The person will be adapting, maybe not necessarily out of comfort, but because that is where he or she will be for the moment. The person should understand the values. And then when you get the person to know the values, the basic training, somebody may be very apt with domestic issues, but every home has its own peculiarities.
Right.
There may be homes that have a deep freezer or for preserving food, but there's another one without one. So get the person to know that this is how you've been functioning in order to succeed.
Okay.
So when you get the values known and get the basic training for the person, at least already it is going to create a kind of atmosphere where the person will either accept that he will be able to flow, he or she to say will be able to flow with the dispensation of your home, or will not be able. And with this, it's always very important that the husband and wife should be in one accord.
Okay.
Let there be no disunity in the lines of discussions with your domestic helper, else it is going to crack your marriage big time.
Okay.
At a certain point, you will see a man will give an instruction and the woman's own counteracts.
All right.
At the end, the man will feel that he's being belittled, and the woman will also feel that there is a resistance somewhere. So if both of you will develop that, okay, this is it, a unified approach, you talk with your domestic helper, with your maid, this is how it happens here, this is how we're going to function, and then let discipline also be from the same. Let one not be disciplining the person, and then the other person wants to take sides with him, and then at the end of it all, maybe the man who wanted to create the order in the house becomes the third person singular.
Right. I'm getting one key phrase from what you're saying. It's speak with one voice when it concerns the house help.
Very important.
Right. And now are there new words creeping into our vocabs as a result of the virus? One of them is social distancing. I've been within contexts where you find the domestic helper, like you prefer calling them, you know, when they're sitting on the dinner table in the evenings, the help or house help, domestic helper is distanced. She's pushed out of the whole thing, which means the difference is clear. They show that you don't belong to this place. Is that wrong to do?
Very wrong in my opinion. Some people may not agree with this, but I am of the opinion that the relationship between a house helper and a couple or a family should be a parent-child relationship, not an employer-employee relationship.
All right. Even if you pay them?
Yes, even if you pay them. It is better to be so, because I don't know, you know, a pay may just be a symbolic token, just a token.
That's what some say.
Yes, right? Because if you want to evaluate the services that these people provide, the 30,000, 40, 50,000, 60,000, even 100,000 that they're giving is not up to anything. Imagine that you got one who is not of a good mind, stays with your kids and rough handles your kid. Imagine that one decides to, you know, prepare food and put some kind of thing in the food.
Right.
Imagine that the standards of the home are compromised in one way or the other. You know, the hygiene standards are compromised in one way or the other. It may end up getting the family spending far more than what you think you should pay the person. So besides the payments and anything, the best of things to do for me is maintain a parent-child relationship. Get the person know that you are here not just as an employee, you are part of our family.
All right.
It will give the person also the urge to put in his or her best and go over and beyond working for a pay. It will sort many things out. I've lived with a couple of them, and I don't remember any of the cases where I accept the remuneration that's monthly salary. One of the things that happens is, even if I were to get to that, I prefer to open an account and be dropping the funds in it.
All right.
Most families do this. They send their child to live with somebody or to work for somebody, and what they do is they receive the funds and they are consuming.
Right.
Consuming. At the end, the child would have lived with somebody for 5 years, and after the 5 years, nothing to show. So I always prefer a formula where, if you live, will you prefer to go to school or to learn a trade?
All right.
Yes. When you say, okay, I would prefer to learn a trade, I thought, okay, we agree on maybe after 3 years or after 2 years,
Okay.
you begin learning a trade, or you start school. It is always much better because the person also identifies that you have his or her future.
Of course.
Interest in his or her future.
Right. That way they take their own responsibilities and they know they need to behave accordingly.
That is it.
Right.
That is it. Because if you pay at the end of it, or they will get embittered having to work, and then you send their remuneration to their parents, who take and will not reserve anything for them. They will labor in vain and labor at the end of it all. Maybe she came living with you at 18. When she had clocked 30, she has no dime kept for her anywhere, and she starts getting frustrated.
But the parents deserve something from.
They deserve
brought
something.
up the child to that.
Sure.
To that level.
No, when they live with me and are learning a trade, we still do gestures to the parents.
All right. Once in a while.
Very important.
Okay.
Because you are operating within a framework where you think these are two families that have come together, and you don't think you should draw one thick line and say this is this family and this is me.
Do you propose? I mean, do you agree with those who think that you should impose some conditions? I'm looking at a family that is all Catholic, for example, and the little house help who comes in is Muslim, for example. Would you insist that she comes along to church with you?
Yes, I will.
That's because you're also a man of God. You're changing their faith.
The issue is that those are some of the things we discuss up front.
All right.
If we can't reach an agreement on key issues like the person's spirituality, it's better we part ways before we begin.
Okay.
Yeah, those are key issues. There may be other things you can compromise, but key issues like the person's spirituality is not something that I should take for granted. So
after all, they are going to be living and bringing up the children for you when you're not there. They must know.
They must be able to catch the values, both spiritual, moral, and otherwise. The values of a home, or what I represent, to be able to transmit to the children. They have a part to play in the lives of the children. So if allow, and very soon you come to the house, you see your baby bring Allah.
or you are a Muslim and you come to the house and see the child saying, for God so loved the world that he gave it, you'll be scandalized.
You see, it will become so traumatizing, and it will become so disturbing to a parent who comes and sees such a situation.
Is there an age recommendation for house helps, domestic helpers?
Oh, for me, it will depend more on what you, as the person living with the child, or who is the child, what you give to the person as responsibility.
All right.
Yeah, you can have people who begin living with you even at 3, but in that case, you will not say it's a baby, it's a domestic helper per se. Yeah. So you just bring it up. It may be a relative or not, but now what you must pretend is whatever age the person can mind what you confide as responsibility to him. don't get involved in child labor.
Okay. Yeah, I know, because when you mentioned the age 3, I was just looking at you and saying, I know a couple of people out there who are going to be saying, no, that's child labor. It's child enslavement and so on.
Honestly, it is even. I was even going to say that as a when somebody is working for you within the domestic framework, it is good to mind what you delegate to the person and what you don't delegate. Take for instance, you take your undies and give to your house to help to watch. It's not fair. It's not good. Because you have a helper at home does not mean you will give everything, delegate everything, and then you come back home in the evening and stay watching the television or something. It's a bad mindset. There are things you can delegate, there are things you can't delegate. I will encourage that most women should try as much as possible, even you have 10 housemates, try to serve your husband yourself.
All right.
Yeah.
In fact,
cook if you can, but if it gets to, at least come inspect what has been done by the domestic helper, and then you see how you, if need be, you do some adjustments, serve your husband yourself. Else you end up seeing that you do not only delegate your responsibilities, you can also delegate your position.
Oh, thank you for coming.
It's a pleasure.
It's been so enriching.